Hey guys, welcome to Let's Draw Fakemon episode 2, and today we are going to be going over my design process for this new batch. If you haven't seen my last video, we went over the chili fish and I gave a little introduction of myself, so if you missed that, please go check it out if you're interested. But today we are going to be talking about a 3-stage line of ghost types. I realized I didn't have a typical 3-stage ghost line, even though I do have quite a bit of ghost types already in my region, but for this one I was inspired by my recent visit to Thailand and the many spirit houses that are kind of like dotted around the neighborhoods and are near houses and stuff. I learned a little bit about the story behind them. They're usually built after a construction project has begun. The idea is that the spirits who already live there have to be given a home if you're moving in so that they have a place to stay. So I based this line of Fakemon on that concept. And I knew I wanted it to evolve into kind of a house shape, very similar to the actual spirit houses in Thailand. But I also kind of wanted to tell a story with the evolution line and not just have a house kind of grow in size with every stage. So this first stage is kind of a humanoid creature. So this line is a kind of combination humanoid and synthetic Pokemon, which is often not very popular, but I took that as kind of a challenge. So this first stage, Nomad, is just a kind of humanoid spirit type, but it is decorated with many flowers, which a lot of the spirit houses are also decorated with as a form of offering. And it also gives him the kind of implication that he's almost like he's on vacation or he's like moving, so that the idea is that this stage it's still looking for a house. So again, with trying to kind of tell a story with the evolution line, like what if the spirit didn't get a house when whoever decided to build over their land was not as aware or just didn't care enough, so this one had to go find a new house. So he's got his belongings and he's moving around and trying to find a new place. So in terms of gameplay, it's a ghost normal line, and it would replace the normal type by the type of terrain it would be on. So it's like moving into a new terrain, taking on the properties of the terrain that it's now occupying. Overall, this stage of the design isn't too complicated. I tried to incorporate some traditional Thai shapes into its kind of hair bun at the top with the jewelry holding it in place, as well as kind of the spirit wisps coming off the ears that is on a lot of Thai jewelry, Thai earrings or loops. I don't actually know what they're called. Another thing I can talk about is the square eyes. Usually I sketch out like the full line before I start finishing any specific creature, because oftentimes you will find that the choices you make in the later stages will inform the earlier stages as well. It always helps to kind of carry over certain design aspects that you'll see later on. But the idea is that these square eye shapes help kind of keep what's called a design language consistent all the way across the stages. So I knew it was going to become a house shape eventually. So, and houses are typically pretty square. Most of the spirit houses that you can see in Thailand are pretty square. So keeping that square motif throughout the entire creature is usually preferable, just so that it feels unified all the way across the stages. And of course the suitcases as well lend themselves really easily to that shape language. But other than that, that's pretty much all of the things I have to say about this stage. Moving on to Spirit House. Now this one is clearly more house shaped, but to make that kind of large leap from Nomad to Spirit House, I wanted to try to carry over some of the elements from Nomad to this design, so it wasn't too jarring of a jump between the both of them. So you can see one of the briefcases has become the roof, and the flowers are obviously still there, which will obviously carry over throughout the stages. And the little wisps from the ears carries over to kind of like a smoke trail coming out of the back of the house. But other than that, a lot of the design elements here are based on real Thai spirit houses. So a lot of those design elements were decided for me essentially. So the main difficulty with this design is to go from the previous stage to this stage and kind of make it so that it was believable that Nomad could become Spirit House. Obviously the face helps a lot. I kept it in the kind of doorway, and I felt like a lot of like monster houses such as Hell House from Final Fantasy VII, or the monster house from the animated film, use like windows for the eyes and stuff, but I wanted to feel less like the house itself was the monster and more like the spirit inside was the monster, and it had control over the house, so I wanted to keep its original face in there. But other than that, this one is, again, pretty simple. It's mostly about connecting the 2 stages. So we shall move on to the last stage. So obviously the last stage, it became kind of an upgrade in material. So the wood house becomes mostly a stone house, but we still have a couple nods to Nomad's original design. The suitcase roof from the previous stage determined that the tiles of the roof should be black, and elements like that help tie in the design even if it's just small nods like that. Obviously, stone is an obvious upgrade, so don't underestimate like obvious kind of connections like this when you're making designs. Just because it's the obvious choice doesn't mean it's the wrong choice. But something I think would be useful to talk about here is the use of perspective. Perspective is really important for all art, but it's doubly important for very geometric shapes like this creature was, and as well as the previous stage. And you'll see I'm using the CSP, the Clip Studio Paint perspective tool to help me out here, but I like to sketch the original underdrawing without perspective lines just so it doesn't lose energy right away, because a lot of times if you start with a perspective grid, you'll try to put everything within that perspective grid and your overall design will kind of lose the life. A lot of artists will say like, oh, my sketch looked a lot better than my finished drawing, and that the more rounds you tighten something up, that tends to happen. And it goes doubly so when you have a grid to work with. So something that really helps here is the flowers to make it feel less static and more lively. If I had started with the perspective grid right away, the flowers might not have been swaying like they are in the final. I might have been more tempted to have them follow the exact grid lines, but since I started with a super loose drawing, I kept the energy of the flower sway, which I think improved it a lot. Also, a little trick that I've learned in making your line work feel a little more dimensional and less cartoony is that, especially for hard surface stuff like this, is that any corner that's facing you, turn that into a highlight. You can see clearly here how I'm doing that with the corners of the wall, the roof, and all the stone in general. It really helps the dimensionality of the creature. So yeah, that's this line. Yeah, I'm still kind of testing this out and trying new things with this, but it's been really fun to make these. And if there's anything you guys want to see or have any extra like questions, or is there any part of the video you guys would like me to go into more detail on, please let me know in the comments. Feedback is super important when you're starting out with this stuff. But thanks for watching, and I hope you stick around. Bye.